What's up, everybody? I got Glitz here with me. We're gonna do the first of many here of our league recaps. Take a look back at the draft and week one, and kind of take a look at some of the stuff Fantrix has to offer since it's new to all of us here. So, Glitz, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Week one is in the books, and I am only mildly disappointed, which compared to my fantasy football season is a great feeling.
Nice. How'd you do week one? I didn't even see.
I was down. I lost 5-4 to. There's so many people; it's hard to track. I lost 5-4 to somebody. Who was it?
You got my heart on Bogut's, carry on my Hayward son, or
opponent. It was Bolton. It was carry on my Hayward son. It took me a while to figure out because I'm so used to Bolton's team simply being called Bolton's team. So hunting for him was difficult.
Yeah, nice. Well, I got the big 7-2 win. I'm pretty pumped about that. And, it's kind of fitting that Seymour is the only one talking shit for like 3 weeks. And he's the only one to lose 2-7 week one. So
it makes sense to me simply because it's continuing that same mantra of he's got to give us the head start. So clearly this was all in the plans.
Yeah, that's true. And clearly I'm going to lose 7-2 week two here after bringing up shit on the podcast or whatever you call this, the video cast. What'd you think of the draft? Auction drafts are hard. They're always hard.
I think it went faster than I expected. So it took a while to figure out what all was going on. But clearly, I made a wonderful mistake when I nominated John Collins.
I mean, John Collins was the best moment of the draft, I think, for sure. The draft goes like so fast, it's impossible to keep up with everything. Everybody took the time to freak out about John Collins during the draft. So, like, it didn't matter. Like, that was the best moment of the draft, which, I mean, John Collins was on my list.
That's exactly what happened is I was building my queue of guys, and what I had done is I was just going through every team in the NBA. I just went Atlanta, and I picked the players that I was going to be interested in, so that way I had that special noise when one of them was up, so I knew to bid on them. And I couldn't – it was my first nomination. I couldn't quite figure out how to nominate someone, and so the first person on my list was the first alphabetical person from the first alphabetical team, and John Collins happens.
It all happened by alphabet chance. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I bid on him, as did a lot of people, until eventually I was like, okay, I can't go any further on John Collins. But
clearly other people thought they could.
Like, Trae Young had 33 and 11 the other day. Like, there's shots to go around in Atlanta. Collins is supposed to be their best player now. So, like at the same time, he played in the preseason. Like, I don't know. There's risk there. I can't remember the last player to play in the preseason who was like an all-star level. It's been a long time since that happened, I think. So that we'll see how it goes. But it was good fun for John Collins. I'm pulling up everybody's team here. Any team stand out to you as like winning the draft or exceptionally good picks? Or
I think that there was a few that Jimmy's team, I think, is going to be interesting to see, simply because his team is not nearly as his value is all everyone on that team. I'm looking at Jimmy's team, like a lot of those guys on that team are really good value picks. So the question is going to be, is that going to be enough to be competitive this year, or does that give him a huge advantage going into next year? I'm interested to see how all that's going to play out.
Yeah, so the two most interesting drafts to me were Jimmy's and Nick's. So Jimmy's spent $13 on Draymond Green, and his second highest paid player is $6. So he's the only one with that kind of cap space. I don't. What's he coming in with? 52 in cap space. It's insane.
34 in cap space. Looking at it right now.
Oh, it's 34.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know what my math is, but clearly not correct. Anyway, I mean, no one else has got anywhere near 34 in cap space. So Jimmy, he's the Sacramento Kings of our league. He's got deep pockets, and we'll see if that returns some future production. I don't know. It's very interesting. Yeah, but you're right. The team's like not that bad. They're like guys I would want on my team. You know, you got Nikola Mirotic, Draymond Green, Steven Adams, Paul Millsap, Serge Ibaka, Pat Beverly, Eric Gordon, Kyle Kuzma, Dennis Smith Jr. Like I would have taken any of these guys. It's just I want to combine them with like LeBron James or Anthony Davis. So he doesn't have that stud. Draymond Green is his stud, and we'll see if it's enough to compete. What did he do week one? Did you see? I'm pulling that up right now.
Oh no, let me pull that up. Well, you pull that up as I look at other draft teams. Because, on the other side, as you look that up, like the other thing that stood out to me.
He won 6-3. He's in second place.
I mean, so maybe it's going to work. Right. And then you look on the other side of the spectrum and you got the two Zachs. You got Coach Kelly and Bleicher, Grog. And they went the opposite way where they were all in right away. And they both doubled down on Bleicher's got Anthony Davis and Steph Curry. I mean, that's 76 of his $95 of it that he spent. And Coach Kelly went off with James and Russ, LeBron and Russ. I mean, and that's 37 times 74. I mean, you got two big time bids, and then the bottom of the roster is not quite as strong.
So here's the thing: like, this is my big picture view on auction drafts. Is the best way to win an auction draft to me is to get the most value or the most talent. I should say the most production, right? And in a league like ours, value becomes a big determiner, and that can skew production. So, for instance, if I didn't bid on anybody for the first 100 picks, and then I had by far the deepest pockets, and instead of somebody getting a value for a guy at $2 who's worth $5, I was able to get about $3. I gained $2 in value there. But my total production wouldn't be as high because I would have ended up leaving the draft if I bid $3 times 10 spots, spending 30 of my $100. Well, it was worth 60. I had plus 30 in value. I did better than everybody, but my whole team would still only be worth 60, where you could have just spent all 100 at value and gotten more production. So it's there's two things that play there between actual production you're getting and value. I think because our draft was so deep and we were pretty dialed in as owners, usually how drafts tend to go, auction drafts I've been a part of, and I don't know how many I've done, 7, 8, 9, 10, something like that. The very elite guys, the first round guys, tend to go for more than they're worth, right? They tend to, you have to pay a premium, which makes sense to me because there's closer to guaranteed value there, right? We think Draymond Green's going to be good, but we're pretty darn sure Steph Curry is going to be good. And we think Eric Bledsoe is going to produce this year, but there's a lot better chance that Russell Westbrook produces this year. So those guys who are projected first round picks, they tend to be more of a sure bet. So people overpay for that confidence, that assurance. And then because more money was spent than should have been on those guys, those next tier guys, those third and fourth and fifth round guys, tend to go to discount. But our league was so deep that to me, those third and fourth and fifth round guys went at value still. And people were willing to spend. So that value point, instead of being $10 to $15 guys, shifted to $3 to $6 guys. That's where the value shifted way down. So these guys who spent a lot of money early, like Zach and Kelly, normally you kind of get screwed at the back end with all your $1 guys. We were all sitting there with $1 guys. So to me, they just they wash there and they get the guaranteed value of guys like Anthony Davis and Steph Curry and Russell Westbrook. They had good drafts. I like the stars and the scrubs model really seemed to work with our draft.
Yeah, I didn't go quite as extreme as they did by doubling down on the two, but I was really happy when KD was one of the last of the elites players, because he was the one of Anthony Davis and James Harden, and I still don't know quite to say if Giannis belongs in that group. But of Steph Curry, those guys that have for years been the top 3 to 4 fantasy players, KD is the one that I valued the most. And to see that he was nominated after AD and after Harden and after John Collins and after Karl-Anthony Towns and after even Kevin Love, I got to see somewhere that value was being played, and decided okay, this is my last chance, and I overpaid for him. I don't think he's worth 40, but he's KD, and I'm going to take it. And I wanted one of those guys, and so having him slip to the end, I think depressed his value a little bit versus Towns at 41 and KD at 40. think KD at 40 is a much better price.
KD at much better price than who?
Than Towns at 41.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not much better, but it's a better price because the market had been set, and then some of the guys that were going to overspend already had. He slipped near the end of that type of player.
I'm a little biased towards KD. Like, I really like his fantasy game because I think he gets you like sneaky blocks and sneaky percentages and everything. But if we were doing a snake draft, where would you have picked KD? Is he a top 12 player, a top 5 player, or top 2 player? Like, how do you slot KD?
Oh, I would go. I think for me, it's always a coin flip between Anthony Davis and KD. Those two are the top 2 that I always try to target. And from there, I go to Harden.
Okay, so you think he's a top 3 guaranteed, really a top 2 player. See, I think you can make an argument that he's a top 5 player. And if I honestly throw Cat in that category too. I think Cat is getting screwed right now by the whole Jimmy Butler thing. And like he had 6 shot attempts the other day or whatever. Like that's ridiculous for the best player on the team to only get 6 field goal attempts. So I think that's going to correct itself a little bit. But I think the Anthony Davis, Harden, Giannis, KD, and probably Towns, and maybe Curry.
Yeah.
They all, I wouldn't be surprised if any one of those guys was the number 1 player at the end of the year. Like if it was a snake draft, I probably would have leaned towards Davis and Harden based on like how they finished last year and what they did last year. And then I probably would have gone Durant next. So I still have him as a top 3. But I think, the fact that those guys all went for 40 plus or close to it anyways, I think is reasonable. Like I kind of do consider that same boat in the back of my mind. With maybe I was a little more intrigued by Davis this year. Like Davis was my number 1 this year because what he did after DeMarcus left last year was just stupid. And it's small sample size alert. I get that, but the fact that he's got a whole year to do it without Davis, he's got me intrigued too. But
yeah, he would have been number 1 for me. The reason I always go with KD over guys like Cat, maybe not as much, but guys like Harden and guys like Giannis is that KD's he's a plus across the board. He's a plus to a plus across the board in every stat. And so as my first pick, I'm not dictating a team build. With Giannis, you're probably not going to win free throw percentage based upon him alone. With Harden, you're probably going to be looking at not winning turnovers based upon him alone. And so that's why I always put KD up there with Anthony Davis and honestly, Cat's right there with him. He doesn't provide as much huge value in anything, but he's another guy that doesn't hurt you anywhere versus some of those other dudes. That's why I put him there, especially in an auction draft where you can go and you can find value. Well, I just want to go find somebody that I can do anything I want. The second person, I can let the second big value piece I see can dictate my team build as opposed to, and I already have my stud, instead of my stud forcing my hand the rest of the way.
I like doing that too. I like being flexible as I can with my first pick. What did you think about like the average market price? So I'm looking at the player salaries here, and we have 5 guys at 40 or above. So like the market price for the first half of the first round was 40 and up. So this is 2 leagues merging here, but in the original league, I think we had 1 player in above 40, and he was in like the 3rd or 4th year of his contract. And in the second league, I don't think we had a single player above 40. But year 1 here, we've got 5 guys above 40. Do you think that's expected? You kind of wrote during the draft that you were expecting to get Durant for 40, that you paid like exactly what you thought you'd have to for him.
Yeah.
To be honest, that's higher than I thought it was going to go. I wasn't willing to go into the 40s for anybody. But you were expecting that now for these top guys?
Yeah, I was expecting that. And I think part of it is I may be divulging a little bit of my strategy, which I don't mind doing all that much because most everybody's locked in their contract extensions. I went into the draft knowing and willingly overpaying on KD for year 1, or somebody like KD for year 1 with the intention of not extending it. And knowing that, you know what, I'm going to get it, and I might be able to get him at a slight discount next year because I assumed, and I think I read the league correctly, that most people were going to take the 2-year flat contract on their studs. And that's what most people did. And so I'm going to roll in. I put KD on a 1-year contract. knowing that his 40 million, if I can re-get him for 40 million, great. I have a few, and if I need to add a little bit more money to get him, then maybe I have to next year. But the likelihood is that I should be able to get KD more at a market value in the mid 30s to mid 30-ish range for next year, because I overpaid this year and put him on a 1-year contract. I'm always trying to mess with free agent space, as those of you that have been in a league with me know. And so I try to read the league and try to anticipate, okay, people are going to take 2-year contracts and there's going to be a bubble of lesser cap after the first year. This might be a time for me to be able to get a steal on a top tier player. And by having him on my team guaranteed and having that cap space tied up on him already gave me a leg up there.
So let me ask you this, and you can stop me if you think I'm prying too much at personal strategy or whatever, but how many of your guys run 2-year contracts? Was it a lot, or is it just – I mean, it's
I can see at this point, it's public knowledge, so I can tell you. Right. I mean, I have no problem telling you. Like, I went in, and most guys that I thought were going to be on fair value, I did 2 years, except for KD. And so on my team, Devin Booker's on a 2-year contract. Gordon Hayward's on a 2-year contract. Dante DiVincenzo's on 2-year contracts, I think, and he had played off much better than I thought it would. He's getting 20-plus minutes a night in Milwaukee. Mikal Bridges, I don't know, but I know if he's a low-value guy, and I think he's going to put up some minutes, have some minutes in Phoenix, I want him to have a chance to extend him long-term. And then Kristaps. And so I went in and KD and Al Horford, I made expiring. That way, if I really have to, if I need the cap space, I want KD. KD's the guy I want. And so I have 47 million next going into the free agent. I'm pretty sure I'm getting KD back. And I'm also pretty sure I'm getting KD back at probably a lesser contract than what I have him on right now.
See, that's interesting to me because I predicted it a little different and did things very different than you. So of my whole team, I only have one player on a 2-year contract. Right. So I've got, I believe it was Buddy Hield on a 2-year contract, and that was it. So I was hoping to get a bunch of value contracts and felt like I got basically a team full of like 2% value contracts, right? Like if I got Middleton for 11, I think he was worth like somewhere in the 10 to 15 range, probably like 10 to 12. And that's what I paid for him. I just feel like I got everybody for what they were worth. And because I kept waiting for the value early in the draft, I kept waiting for that big name who was going to go cheaper, right? Like for some reason, Harden falls to 25, but it didn't happen. For some reason, nobody wanted, Karl Anthony Towns because they wanted the other name. So he falls to 30. Like I kept waiting for that to happen and it never happened. And literally like the studs were starting to run out and I paid 25 for Lillard, which I felt was like, okay, he's probably worth 25. Like I'll pay market value for Lillard. I like Lillard. But it goes against what we were saying earlier. So that was my first pick and my first big money spend. So it kind of puts me into a build, right? Because Lillard is a low field goal percentage guy, a high turnover guy. He's a chucker, but he's elite in like points, threes, assists, steals. So I was like, okay, I'll just either try to correct this or build around it. We'll see how things go. But I perceive the offseason not necessarily as being like a value time. So some players are going to be on 2-year contracts and some players are going to be on 1-year contracts and thrown back into offseason free agency, right? So most of the teams are keeping younger guys and guys who they thought they got for a deal in the draft. So because of that, let's say theoretically whole draft wide, we each have 100 mil times 16. There's $1,600 in total cap space to be spent. Let's say theoretically 1,200 of the 1,600 is kept. And then the other 400 of the 1,600 gets thrown back into the offseason. I think there will be less than $400 worth of value because guys are they're basically throwing back people they overpaid for, or throwing back older people who are going to be worse next year, therefore not worth as much.
Right.
And there will be more dollars available for a smaller piece of the pie in the offseason. I don't know if it's going to happen like that, but that was my thought process, my perception. But even thinking there wouldn't be value in the offseason, I'm going to build my whole team from the offseason. So I guess I'm not buying what I'm selling a little bit because when I went to go make my 2-year contracts, I just didn't like the value of my guys. Like I wouldn't be surprised if I only bring back 1 or 2 from my next year because I feel like I didn't do a great job in the auction. Basically is what it comes down to. I felt like I didn't didn't get a great return on investment, and I'll like see what I can get later. But I don't have the same perception of you as that there'll be a good return on investment in the off season.
And that's where I think, I'm playing amateur psychologist, and I know I've seen, especially for the guys that are in the league, like I've seen our spending habits for 6 years. I know how we value players, and so I saw, and I think other than you, most people kept a lot of their guys. Like a lot of people kept people on 2-year contracts, and that's what I anticipated happening. I know people tend to think their draft is good, even if it's not a good draft. Like people tend to think their draft is good, and they'd want to keep those players. And I ain't gonna lie, in years past, I've scouted my free agent opponents, right? And so it's hard to anticipate. I don't put much value in the free agent in the league. There was a year where I wanted nothing to do with free agency because I saw that there was a good amount of money, and there was a bunch of the owners I really respect their free agency. Okay, versus, and this was back before our current league. I targeted the year that there was just George Parker and one other person that I was bidding against as big money guys. And Seymour walked into that George Parker spot. I wasn't anticipating Seymour, but it worked out. He was brand new to the league. I had one other guy to bid against. I got Anthony Davis on a steal because I scouted the owners. And in our league right now, I don't think that's going to happen very often. I think it's going to be pretty fluid. I think it's going to be pretty balanced. And I tried pre-draft to identify the 1 year where I thought something might be able to be there. Hence why I did the way I did.
Yeah, it's fun. It's going to be fun. It's the unknown, obviously, so I like that. When you talked about potential value in extending guys, I brought up earlier that I liked Jimmy's draft and I liked Nick's draft. Let me pull up Nick's team here. So he's Lansing with myself. And John pointed this out at one point. I'm going to read to you. I've got the team up here by age. Ready? Top to bottom, the age of his players. 22, 19.
Who's this?
This is Nick New. 22, 19, 19, 20, 20, 20, 29, 20, 21, 22, 24, 20, 19, 21. He's got, Grandpa Bogdanovich there from Indiana. And besides one guy being 29, his second oldest guy is 24 years old. Nerlens Noel is the second oldest player on his team. So you're talking about potential value there. He also saved cap space. I don't think he saved quite as much as Jimmy, but
he spent $91 of his $95, so he has $4.
He's got $9, I guess, technically, right? Because we got the 5 plus.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I look at this team and he's got Luka Doncic, he's got Jaren Jackson Jr., Jason Tatum, Wendell Carter Jr., De'Aaron Fox, Mohamed Bamba, Miles Bridges, Colin Sexton, Josh. Like he's probably got 8 or 9 guys who are first or second year players. So clearly the youngest team. His team's not like bad. He's also got Ben Simmons, who he paid 28 for, which I mean, so far he played the Pistons tonight. Pistons, they were in overtime. Actually, I got it being recorded right now. But he didn't play tonight versus Pistons, but I saw him a couple times earlier in the year. He's looking awesome. So he kind of paid top dollar for Simmons probably, but other than that, he's paid like $1 extra than I was willing to go on most of these rookies, right? Like I would have spent good for Doncic. I would have spent good for Jaren Jackson Jr. or Jason Tatum or even Miles Bridges. I would have thrown – like I was interested in Miles Bridges' potential. He threw $1 at him when I didn't have more than $1. And like there is potential value there. He can extend these guys. And a lot of them run cheap deals. If you're on $5 or less, there is potential to get value in extension. Now, that being said, there's probably not a riskier play in fantasy sports than the rookies, right? Because you just don't like 5 years from now, at least 2 of the top 5 picks are probably not going to be worth being in fantasy anymore, right? Like it's very unpredictable. Just because you're a top 5 pick doesn't mean you have fantasy production or output, but it's looking like a good class, right? Like guys are starting to make some noise. And I mean, Trae Young dropped 33 and 11 the other day. Doncic has looked really awesome. And some of the second year guys, there's not a lot of questions there, right? De'Aaron Fox has looked good. Bamba's blocking 2 shots a game. Like it's an interesting draft. He might have a tough time competing this year, but he might be set up better than anybody for the future. I don't know. Very intriguing.
I think this is a point that a good point for discussion on one of these major rule changes of the extensions and how, we as the commissioners have perceived them possibly putting into having an impact on the league. And I think Nick's team's a great example of this, where our mindset going in is that the biggest value that could possibly be had under our new system is the super max, incredibly long extension that teams could go for. Yes, it will be expensive, right? But if I'm Nick and I have the opportunity at the end of next year to say that, Jaren Jackson is the man. He's the next iteration of Towns. He's that second tier, maybe top 5, maybe top 20 player. And you know what? I'm going to lock him down, and it's going to be a 4-year extension, is $12 million added to his contract. But 4 years, and if he's a $25 million player, and I can lock him up for 18 for the next 4 years, I mean, that's a great steal. I can go 5 years and only get him for 21. I mean, that's going to be where we as commissioners were both excited and nervous of where's going to be the super steal, okay? And how are those going to alter the league? That the next Donovan Mitchell. And I think if I'm Nick might have one of those guys, which is one of the reasons why I know there was some questions on the GroupMe asked, or comments made on the GroupMe, or some texts that I've been getting about the fact that all in-year free agents are 1-year contracts. If that's part of the reason we did that, if you were just for a bit of transparency, is that if you are going to take a risk, you need to take the risk in a draft, in an auction draft type setting, which will happen every offseason now. During every offseason, you have a chance to take a flyer on Donovan Mitchell for $1. And if it hits, it hits. You don't just get to win it because you were a week earlier guessing it than everybody else in the season. And so that's one of the reasons we did the 1-year only long in-season free agents. For those that were not aware, that is a big change. And the extensions are a big change. But we try to marry those rules to make them as competitive and fair as possible.
Yeah, and there's also some technical difficulties. Yes. We wanted to have more than 1-year contracts for in-season free agent bids. It's really screwy on Fantrax how they do it. The way we've always done contracts, and our idea of a contract as like certain amount of dollars earned per season over time, is just not the way they view contracts. Right. Like they view contracts as like a salary, and like time is like separate from the salary, I guess, the way it's in their system. So you really, like for us going in and saying, okay, who do you want as 1 year and who do you want as 2 year? That's all done manually. And if we wanted to make it exactly like our league before, it would just be all manual. It'd be the same thing. We might as well be doing it on the Google spreadsheet. So we're trying to minimize whatever's done manually as much as we can, obviously. But so that's kind of what we're left with, is in-season free agents being 1 year. But yeah, it'll be good. And that being said, the 2 other questions I got that I want to make sure everybody knows, we've emailed out, but I know stuff can get lost in email. One was, what are the cap hit penalties? And they are in the rules, but they're not in like that rules summary page, I guess. So there's a couple things in the rules that aren't in that rules summary. I just want to remind everybody. So the cap hit penalty is 80% this year if you drop somebody, 80% this year, 50% next year, and year 3+ is always 0%. So they only keep track of cap holds 1 season into the future. So we're only going to keep track 1 season into the future. So if you got someone on a 10-year contract and they were $10 million and you gave them a 10-year extension, so now they're $40 million for the next 10 years, you'd owe your big hit this year, your $20 million next year, and then it'd come off the books year 3 and beyond. And then so that was one. The cap hits are 80% this year, 50% next year, 0% after that. And then the other one was, if you have a player who gets injured midweek, you can take him off and move somebody in. So I'll screen share real fast here, taking over the screen, and show you guys on Fantrax. Huh?
Oh, yeah, it's full on Inception for a second there.
Sorry, going to space. So if you go to your team roster, and there's a lot of different ways to look at the team roster pages or whatever. But for example, I had Chris Dunn get injured. He came back for like 9 minutes to then be out for 6 weeks. So thank you, Chris Dunn. But right now we're in period 2, and you can see that the player positions are locked over here. I had Chris Dunn in this week. When he got hurt, his thing will come up allowing you to move it out. So you can click done, change him to the IR, and when you do that, it'll ask you to move somebody up. So another box pops up in the bottom right corner. Do you want to move Chris Dunn to the IR? And I think I moved Buddy Hield, and move Buddy Hield up. Yes, submit, and it'll do it. If I try to do that, so you can change to daily here. It lets you look at it every day. So if I go to tomorrow and I said I want to change Eric Bledsoe out, who's not hurt, for Trey Burke, the box comes up, save roster, submit. I get the warning black. Sorry, you can't perform the next right now. You can only make daily changes for a player that is injured. So that's how that works. So if he would have been injured, it would have allowed me to make that move and throw him to the IR. I keep it on weekly just because it's easier. And now it defaulted to week 3, so now my guys can all be moved or whatever. But go back to the current week, they can't be moved. Couple other things about Fantrax, just so we all know. There's this Fantrax headquarter at the top here. You've got, basically this is like Yahoo's equivalent of like where their writers have everything, and there's fantasy writers on here and podcasts and all that stuff. So there's some cool stuff on here. Not that it's super applicable to like our league specific, but it's just like fantasy basketball stuff that's interesting. And then one other thing is like your team preferences and all that, and what you want to get emailed. So if you go into your preferences, you can choose to get emailed like when somebody's trading block changes, when one of your players gets injured, you can get an email. What the score is on any given day. So like you can get all the matchup scores on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or just every Monday after to see how you did. It's pretty specific. You can even get like the news on every player you have. So the news is pretty basic sometimes, like Damian Lillard scored 29 points, just like on Yahoo or whatever. They'll email you that each day for each of your players. So however close you want to follow it, it'll let you do that, or whatever you want to take off so it doesn't flood your email. You can do that too. And then the other thing I know you were talking about, Glitz, is the live scoring. So they've got 2 different ones. They got this old one and the new one. Both Glitz and I have been using the new one. The old one looks like this, kind of as a pop-up screen, and I guess a little more like the old Yahoo, which drove me nuts. So seeing this background makes me want to vomit. I never want to see it this way again. But you can see how I'm doing versus where the new one, it's got different views for you to pick. So I could take standard, detailed, classic. I can see all the teams. You can play around how you're doing. And then, standard would be like whoever played today. So I'm only seeing my team with Buddy Hield because he's the only one playing today. So far, he's got a whopping 0 3-pointers made, 2 points, 2 turnovers, no steals, no blocks. Thank you, Buddy Hield. But you can see your period, and I can see, what my guys have done so far this week, what Sharky's guys have done so far this week. So I guess this is probably like the most standard compared to what we're used to looking at as period, and you can do standard to let you know each team and all this jazz. So yeah, you can look at it a lot of different ways, however you like to do it, but just so you know that's there. And then there's this whole transactions tab. You can come in here and make your claims for your free agent trade, the trade block. I think John and I are the only ones to update our trade block, and we want exactly the same thing, and we're giving the exact same thing. So pin John and I against each other, get yourself a good deal, and get one of us a big man that we need desperately. But yeah, anything else you want to point out, Glitz? I'll stop screen sharing here.
I don't know. I think that's covering most of it. I'm excited to see what happens this year and see how the 16-person league monster affects things, and how John Collins is going to change the world.
John Collins forever. One more thing I'll show. I know Zach was asking about trading cash, and you cannot trade cash in Fantrax. But what you can do is if you want to make a trade. So if I come in here and I'm interested in trading for Russell Westbrook, right? And I want Westbrook, and so I can click next. It'll bring up my team here, right? So it's got DeRozan sending Westbrook to OG Anunoby's over here. It's kind of like this right column we use for the trade. And I'm going to add Damian Lillard. How much is he spending? 37. I need to send more money out, and he needs to get more money, right? If you try to do this, you can't do it. I can just pull up another team and do my 3-team trade right on here. So I can pull up Jimmy's team, and now I can add Nikola Mirotic to the trade, and I can play with all this and who's going where. And you can set up your 3-team trade right on here to like add a little cash to the trade to like make it all work or whatever for somebody. So that's your workaround. It is there. Can do it all right on here. And yeah, that's it. It's a fun draft. There's a lot of good teams out there. There's a lot of good guards and wing players on my team if you need one of those, because I've got more than I need. And yeah, that's all I got. Yeah. We'll be doing more of these little catch-ups, looking at interesting matchups, looking at interesting lines. Oh, gotta mention the interesting line. Did you see Nikola Jokic's line from a couple days ago?
Not until you pointed out before this. That thing is nuts.
Ridiculous. For those of you who didn't see it, he had a triple-double with like 33 or 35 points or something like that. He had made threes. I want to say 3 made threes, 4 steals, a block, 0 turnovers. He went 10 from 11 from the free throw line, and he went 11 of 11 from the field. So literally no turnovers, 91% free throw, 100% from the field, 30-something points, triple-doubles, rebounds, and assists, and then made threes and had like 5 steals and blocks. That is probably the best line of the year already. Like I can't – maybe someone will top it, but that probably is going to be the best line of the year.
Does the NBA do game scores kind of like you see sometimes with baseball and football? So sometimes they'll give a game score where they will assign a rating between a 1 and 100 for a given game. Like I wonder where would the game score on that rate historically? I mean, the perfection from the floor with that volume has to be a unique element.
You know, I think there's it's called reference.com. I think pulling it up right now. I honestly think it tracks it. Like best fantasy lines of all time. The thing about it is it's really screwy when you compare different eras, because I've looked at like this before, and there was like the Larry Bird era when he hit like 3 threes in a game. It was like many standard deviations above the mean to hit 3 threes, where now like Steph hits 3 threes and it's not as impactful. You know what I mean? So like how do you compare? And like now the pace is way higher. So it's hard comparing eras against each other, but I don't know. It might be. I mean, to not miss a shot in 11.
John Hollinger, right? No.
Yep.
Hollinger. What's his name? He came up. It was for basketball. I saw it. John Hollinger came up with it. The highest game score, like a 10, is an average game score, and so I'm now looking up highest Hollinger game scores in NBA history because I'm wondering.
Yeah, and I guess like if I'm thinking of. This is where fantasy gets a little screwy. It depends how you look at it, because like someone who shoots 100% from the field, 91% from the free throw line, like what if Kobe had that exact same line, except he had 10 more points, but he had 8 more missed free throws? Like he probably helped this team more than Jokic did because he scored more points, right? But the fantasy like impact would look worse because he shot 50% from the free throw line, so he looks like he killed your team. Like, so on my guess, Hollinger's thing looks a little less at like efficiency and a little more at like production.
So the Hollinger, I'm looking at it right now. The highest Hollinger game score in history is from March 28th, 1990, by the one and only Michael Jordan. And on this day, we'll see what MJ's stat line was. MJ had, this is rather ridiculous. He was 23 of 37.
37 field goal attempts. Oh my God.
23 of 37 and 21 of 23 from the line.
Okay.
For 69 points. He had 18 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 steals, 1 block, and 2 turnovers.
He had 18 rebounds. Holy
mother. The highest current player would be James Harden. And so Jokic isn't reflected here. So January 30th last year, James Harden's game score had a game score of 58 something or like that. But his stat line was, where's it at? Here it goes. Yet again, it was a 60-pointer, but he was 19 of 30 from the floor, 5 of 14 from 3, 17 of 18 from the line, 10 rebounds, 11 assists, 4 steals. I'm wondering how high the percentages are going to pump his score up because he's
Right.
by far the highest percentages, and he had the triple double.
What was Kobe's 81? That's got to be up there, right? I mean, he scored 81 points.
That would Kobe's highest was 2006, January 22nd, 2006 against the Toronto. It's the 81-point game.
Okay.
So it's the second highest one of all time.
I got to imagine what a Wilt Chamberlain's like.
So game score only goes back to 83, 84. So you can't go that far. Devin Booker's, I'm assuming this is the Devin Booker 60-point game is going to be up there.
You think Charlie Villanueva's 50-point game is up there?
When was Charlie Villanueva's 50-point game? Sometime in high school?
It was not in high school. Pulling it up right now.
You're
I want to say
kidding.
he was rookie when he did it.
No, I refuse to believe this.
Looking it up right now.
So I'm now knee deep in the stats, so I'm gonna have to just throw out random things. You know, all the names are pretty recognizable, except for Willie Burton. Have you ever heard of Willie Burton?
No, Will Barton? I've heard of. No, I don't know who Willie Burton is.
Willie Burton was on the all rookie team in 1990, and on we'll get the date. Okay, Willie Burton on December 13th of 1994 had a game score that was the 25th highest of all time, and he had, I don't even know what team he's on. It's the Heat versus the Sixers. I don't know which team he belongs to, so give me a second to look. Oh, there he is. Willie Burton was 12 of 19 from the floor, 5 of 8 from 3, 24 of 28 from the line, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks for 53 points.
Nice. So Charlie Villanueva, as a rookie, dropped 48 points and 18 rebounds in a game.
No. I mean, I believe you because I'm trusting your screenshot, but I kind of need to see the screenshot to believe this.
Also, you want to hear his averages? He averaged 13 points and 6 rebounds. He dropped 48 in one game. 48, Charlie Villanueva. He literally had his best game ever as a rookie. There's no question about it.
Okay. Well, with that note, I'm going to go cut my hair and shave my beard to become more like Charlie Villanueva.
That's all you can do, really.
That's my best hope in life. All right. Until next time.
Till next time, anybody else got something to say, got some points to debate, let us know. We'll have you on. Do your own. We'll start like a thread on the homepage too, so we can watch all these guys, and we'll embed some links in there. But good luck everyone week 2 here, and peace.